Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tech Seeking Human podcast. It's been a while. Claire, where have you been?
Well, not for you, for me.
What have you been doing?
I've been working. Yeah,
Oh,
do you know about work?
I d- I did take a little bit of a break and invested time in recording an album, which I hope to release soon.
Oh, see the plug?
Yep. I don't think it's going to make me any money, so I probably will be working.
Oh,
Are you looking forward to being back on the podcast?
I am. I didn't know I'd left.
Well, so we sort of had a bit of a hiatus. I don't know if
I
it was.
did. I don't know. I think looking for a job, getting a job, starting the job.
It's pretty full on.
Yeah, I don't know. You need to get some better guests.
Is that why you're back? So Claire's come back to the
Better guests?
podcast.
That's really bad. I
Claire's-
loved all the guests.
Claire's come back to the podcast because now we have an AI thought leader, general manager of Deloitte practice
Yeah.
focused around AI. And because she's a female tech leader who's super intelligent, you decide to turn up.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, I'll join that one.
Yeah. You pick and choose.
Yeah, that's
Why
good.
not? I
Yeah, why
guess,
not?
if you can.
Well, I'm not being paid. So.
Well, we don't make money off this podcast. For anyone that wants to donate sponsorship or episodes, we're really open to it. The whole reason why we started this podcast, though, was so we can learn from people.
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes me read books. I read this book from Beena, and I did Ammanath. And it's a business guide for navigating trust and ethics in AI. It reads a little bit like Jean Kim's Phoenix Project, where she uses fictional
showing off.
company
Yep.
to I read. Well, that's why I do podcasts, so I can read
Yeah,
with people
course.
about people as
Yeah,
we do the
that's
podcast.
why he does it.
Otherwise, I have no reason. And they sign books for me, and then I have signed copies. So when she's an
Oh,
international
that's
megastar,
cool. Yeah.
I have the signed copy, and I have lots of books over there that I've been reading. It forces
Yeah,
me
I
to do it.
noticed you've got them on display. I don't think they were here last time.
No. So you can't see it, but I have like all the people that we interviewed on our podcast over there: Jean Kim and
Hello
Max
World.
Tegmark and
Yep.
Hannah Fry and Ellen Broad. That's a plug for all the other episodes you've probably missed and should go back and watch. But today, Beena is going to take us on a journey around AI and
Yep.
tell us a little bit about like how companies are leveraging it, why they're leveraging it, what could
They're
possibly
spending
go
money on
wrong.
AI, and then they're not getting outcomes.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, I think that's pretty topical.
I heard a statistic that's like 75% of AI projects fail, which
Yeah.
is
It's huge.
if at first you don't succeed, you got to pick yourself up and try again.
Yep. Get those people on board.
So should we
With
get
the
Beena
AI.
on and we'll talk about
Yes.
what are we supposed to do?
No, she'll tell us. I'm ready.
She will?
Yep.
All right, let's get her on. This is Beena Ammanath on Trustworthy AI on the Tech Seeking Human podcast. Hope you enjoy it. Beena, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on your show, Dave and Claire.
And actually, for anyone who doesn't know the behind the scenes that goes on in a podcast, we spent, what do you reckon, Beena, 15 to 20 minutes trying to get audio working for our particular software. Do you reckon they could have developed a trustworthy AI that can get an audio sync to work with these software programs so we don't waste so much time doing these podcasts?
Absolutely. I think, we're going to get there, but it's also a reality check of where things are in the real world, right? There's nobody taking over our jobs yet. There's nobody, trying to replace all work that humans do. I think we still need humans. And given that we spent almost half an hour going back and forth trying to fix this, I think we're okay for now.
But doesn't the media tell us? The media tells us that the AI is coming. We have autonomous vehicles, according to what people believe. They think the Teslas are driving themselves, even though we know they're not. Are we marketing it ahead of ourselves?
Yeah, we live in this hype cycle, right? Everything is on clickbait, and how many clicks can you get? Unfortunately, that era is driving a lot of the headlines, and that's why you see more of that extreme scenarios. It's either all good or it's all worse, right? So it's the best possible scenario and the worst possible scenario that you hear. But the reality is, in the real world, we are very much in the middle, solving the boring problems. That's all AI can do today. Now, there are advances happening in certain parts, obviously, but it's not across the board, across all industries, across all possible jobs. It really depends on the industry and the use case.
Which industries? So there's this middle ground that we're not hearing about,
Yeah.
right? And I think this was a question you were sort of thinking about when both Claire and I have worked in tech for a long time. And so we probably hear, well, every company in tech is leveraging AI. Are they?
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I'd love to hear Beena's thoughts in terms of, the leaders in AI and what type of AI.
Yeah. Actually, let me take a step back. So we did a survey earlier this year to answer that question exactly, and we surveyed about 2,600 executives across the globe to find out, what they were seeing and what was going on in their organization. And you'll be surprised, but 94% of business leaders surveyed agree that AI is critical to success over the next 5 years. And 79% of them say they have fully deployed 3 or more AI applications. And that number is actually growing. This is an annual survey we do. So last year it was 62%. This year it is 79%. The real challenge is coming in, how much outcome or how much output are they seeing by deploying, so much AI? And that's where, going to my earlier point, right? A lot of it is still in the exploratory phase. We're still figuring out. There is no fixed playbook. Where we're seeing the most advances from an industry perspective are the naturally the data intensive ones, right? Healthcare, life sciences, financial sector, and so on. But there is still a lot of challenges around scaling the AI, even though all business leaders are keen to get started. And Dave and Claire, one thing I would like to clarify is, there's also this notion that it's a one size fits all, right? Whereas I like to think of it as the companies that existed before the internet era versus the newer big tech companies, so to speak. Obviously, how you use AI within the post-internet era companies versus the pre-internet, there is a huge difference. And that's where, when I say life sciences, healthcare, FSI, those are more of those legacy, non-digitally native industries where we're seeing a lot of traction. But there's obviously a lot of traction happening in the big tech industry where, AI is embedded within their products and is driving more revenue models. And so we have to make a distinction of, the company's, origin. Where are they in their digital journey themselves, to see how much of AI they're using.
That's a really good point, because as that number increased, you said 93% of organizations have deployed an AI. I started thinking about, are they answering it in terms of, well, we bought a product that has embedded AI in that product, therefore we're leveraging an AI model? Like, does that skew it? And do you have a sense for like what percentage of people, because that's easier, because you didn't develop the AI, right? And you've bought the off-the-shelf product that gives you an AI, versus you're collecting data and training models and deploying AI and then using more of a broad-based AI platform to get your results, or an algorithm. Do you have a sense of like what percentage is in that ballpark, where they're a little bit more advanced and they're customizing their own algorithms?
Yeah, we haven't seen that level of detail. It is almost always, AI cannot be just bought off the shelf without, the organization having their own data, unless it is a very, narrow specific use case. You have to have the data available, your organizational data available, to be able to train the AI solution that you buy. So if you're not a digitally native company, you probably don't have the historical data needed to deploy the AI within your organization. So we are seeing scenarios where companies are also struggling in terms of just, having an AI ready culture, right? Having the talent that's needed. Even if you buy the AI solution, the kind of maintenance that needs to be done, the operations, the scaling it out, training employees on how to use the solution. Those are all things that any organization has to do, irrespective of whether they buy the AI solution or whether they build the AI solution. So it really depends on where they are in their cultural readiness for adopting AI.
Yeah, and we were listening just before you put up a video of who was talking in that video?
That was Dr. Katrina Wallace.
Well,
And
okay.
she's an AI expert here locally in Australia. And she was just talking about how AI is really the power of AI and how big it is with it has no rules, no regulations. Yet,
Yeah.
it's similar to when fire was discovered.
Big
And,
analogy.
and I thought, wow, it's putting that into perspective a little bit. And yeah, like where are we going with regulation in terms of AI?
So fire is a great, comparison. I usually use the comparison of, of auto engine, right? When the first car was invented, when the first engine was created, right? And you're seeing where the engine has been created. We put a body on it, right? It can be any kind of model, but it's you are able to get from point A to point B faster, even though that engine is not fully developed. And in this case, I'm talking about AI as that engine, right? And we are able to drive it on whatever roads we have. But the reality is the speed limits are not defined, the lanes are not drawn up, we don't have seat belts, right? So we are in that era where while the engine is still being developed in the labs, it's being used in real world because it is helping us get from point A to point B faster. And we are driving on roads that are yet to be built. So it's this interesting era where our generation actually has the opportunity to define what those speed limits should be, what those, whether we need seat belts. And it's never going to be a one size fits all. We think about AI regulations as this one thing, whereas it is going to be as nuanced, even more nuanced than speed limits, right? Speed limits in Australia versus Germany versus US versus India, extremely different. So how can we expect there to be one regulation for AI? It is just this interesting phase where everything is coming at us, and we have this once in a lifetime opportunity to actually figure this out. I mean, how cool is that?
It's it's such a good point that you raised, and Beena, I read your book, Trustworthy AI. So if anyone hasn't already picked up a copy, they definitely should. And you used that analogy in the book, and I'm glad you mentioned it because it really made me visually understand where we're at with something that's so abstract. Like AI is really abstract. It's not a thing. You can't really understand what it is. It's an intelligence of some sort, and you're going to define it, and you did do a good job of that in the book. But the analogy of the car, and when
Yeah.
Henry Ford invented this car, and then we just started driving, and people started running into each other and running people over, and we had all sorts of problems. And eventually, to your point, we had to create seatbelts and stop signs, and we had to have roads with lanes, and we had to have
Yeah.
speed limits and speed cameras, and we're still trying to figure it out. And actually, the most shocking statistic that I read in your book, and I know this isn't real, I mean, it's interesting all the same. It said 1 in 107, I was trying to find it, people, 1 in 107 likelihood of being killed by a car in the US. 1 in 107. I remember reading it. I can't find it right now off the top of my head, but do you remember putting that in there?
The motorbike, is it?
No, it was a car.
Ah,
And the argument was an autonomous vehicle
Yeah.
has 1 in 10,000
Yeah.
likelihood, maybe because there's not that many of them on the road, but clearly they're developed
Yeah.
to stop humans from doing and hitting people. Like it's augmenting our intelligence and making it better. It's pretty,
Yeah.
I guess there's two things, and I'm trying to get to the question, which is really difficult for me. The first part of the question is amazing analogy of the car, and where are we at with AI today? Like, are we still painting the road and putting the lines on the road? And the second part is just the augmentation of the intelligence and the analogy then to deaths and the consequences of getting it wrong. That was sort of a question.
Yeah. I'll just say, if the car analogy, the difference between that time and this time is, there was no social media. So it didn't get to amplify to these extremes where, everybody was, getting hyped up or worried. And, we were, there were few folks, the experts from each field came together, figured it out and moved along, right? Every country figured it out for their own. And maybe that's how we need to think about AI and regulations as well. you need to ignore the noise to a large extent to be able to make progress. Because you and I both know as techies that there is not going to be just one regulation. Just like AI is, the type of AI you use is based on the use case, right? It is the regulation, the rules, the best practice is going to be based on the use case, right? And so that's part one. Part two, to your point, is just because it's a machine that's doing it, our expectation for the margin of error is very different than what a human would do, right? We have higher tolerance for the margin of error when humans are performing that exact same task, whereas with machines there is an expectation that it would be much lower. And it could be that case in some time in the future, but you also have to train that AI as much, to make it robust enough to be able to be better than humans in terms of the error rate. And it's hard because we are in this fuzzy evolving phase at this point. It's hard to focus on just one area and solve for it and try to think of the extremes. Let me use the example of bias, right? That's the one thing you hear every time you bring up AI and ethics. Bias is that common theme that you hear. And the reality is, bias may not be relevant in certain AI use cases. It really depends on the use case. Bias, if you are trying to predict, machine failure, it probably is not going to be a big factor, because unless it's touching human data, bias doesn't even come into play. And a lot of work that's done in the industrial space with AI is without human data. So bias doesn't come into play. And but when bias does come into play, going back to that question of margin of error, let me use an example. So bias and facial recognition, we've all seen the headlines every time, right? When facial recognition is used in a law enforcement scenario, if it is biased and it is flagging innocent people as criminals, that's a terrible thing, right? Bias in that scenario is intolerable. But right here, I know of companies using that exact same technology in the exact same location to identify human trafficking victims and kidnapping victims, right? It's the exact same technology. It is tagging a potential kidnapping victim or a human trafficking victim. Now, the question is, is the algorithm performing better than with human eyesight only? If the algorithm is helping you rescue 60% more or even 30% more than you could without, if you didn't use it, is it still worth using the algorithm? So you have to be able to define the metrics, the margins that's acceptable. And it's comes down to those stakeholders to then say, yes, it's helping us rescue, not 100%, but 60%, which is better than not rescuing them at all, right? So, maybe it should be used in that scenario, right? So that's why I think this topic really needs to be solved, from the use case perspective for us to make real progress.
And also it's about the AI working with people, like not on its own.
Yeah.
So, and that comes back to also in organizations where you're deploying your AI in your company. And if you just do it in a silo sort of area of the business, then it'll probably fail, because you need an end for productivity to happen. So
that comes back to culture.
Yeah, there is, you cannot have just a bunch of techies, data scientists or data geeks going and building it in silo without, thinking about, is the culture ready for acceptance? Because you can build the best AI with the best accuracy rate, but if nobody is using it, it's a failed project. And, the reality is there is a lot of hype around this topic. There's a lot of fear of AI taking over jobs, and so people who don't understand, who are not AI fluent, AI savvy, worry about it, right? If they use that software, maybe their jobs will be gone, right? So, it needs to go hand in hand with driving that AI fluency, AI education. You need to bring your entire organization along the journey. This cannot be just an IT project, right? For an organization to succeed, it's, there has to be executive buy-in, but there also has to be buy-in from every employee who feels comfortable on, the company's AI strategy, how it is going to help them do their jobs. That's the level of, that's the level of detail that needs to go into the thinking that needs to go into to make it successful.
And that would have a lot to do with trust, because I used to I used to rally around a particular statistic that said something like 75% of AI projects fail, and I don't know what, I don't know what the number is now, but I guess I'd love to hear from you. How do you make it successful then? Is it about breaking it down and taking people along for the ride? And presumably, like in these large organizations, people have been through COVID, they've been through working from home, they've had a lot of change, and all of a sudden you hear about recessions and inflation, and then you've got senior leadership going, oh yeah, and by the way, we're going to start deploying an AI as well now.
Yeah.
Like the trust level must be pretty low. What are your tips for people, and how do you make the project successful? How do you flip that 75% around from failure to success?
So if leadership isn't bought it, right, there's a lack of executive commitment. That's a big challenge, because as we spoke about earlier, there needs to be a culture change. Every employee needs to be bought in. So, starting with the leadership buy-in, that's usually number one. And then number two is really on managing AI related risk. Just as, you and I, as general citizens, read about the ethics risks or bias in AI, there's also a hesitancy on, we don't know what kind of additional risks we might be taking, and we don't know how to mitigate it. So, there is a fear of, taking on risky project, which doesn't really help AI reach its full potential. And then the focus on, how do you maintain it? How do you support it post-launch? AI is not just to build it once and deploy it, and it's going to stay consistent. It's not like traditional software. It is going to evolve and change as the machine learning model gets more robust and is fed different kinds of data. So having a clear plan on how do you support it post-launch, I think that's one of the reasons as well. And in terms of driving that learning and AI fluency, let me give you an example of something that I've experienced as well. Is like one of the things I highly encourage is make sure everybody in your organization understands AI. When they read a headline, they know what it means. When they are trying to use an AI solution, they are reassured that it's not going to take away their job, right? It's going to help make their jobs easier. Like we talk a lot about how AI is going to take the boring rudimentary tasks and automate it so that you can focus more on the creative part. But think of it from, say an X-ray machine operator, right? Where we are using AI to do that first analysis of the X-ray and provide recommendations. Now it's helping speed up the process from a patient perspective, and it's going to free up time for the X-ray machine operator. But the question that comes in this person's mind is, but it's not like humans are not suddenly going to break more bones and are going to need more X-rays. So what are they supposed to do with that free time? Right? And that's where really leadership needs to come in and say, yes, it is going to free up time. And here are some of the other cool things you could be doing, right? Because when you look at it from a worker's perspective, freeing up time is not as reassuring, because then, the job is reduced. We are used to this mindset, right? So I think that it is much more nuanced than just saying, yes, humans working with machines and freeing up time from boring tasks, but what happens in that free time?
Yeah, and it's like continuous learning, like companies reinvesting in education so they can predict sort of particular industries that might need to evolve a little bit. Like I don't think it's on any company's agenda to go, well, let's just get an AI in and sack everyone. I think if you ask any CIO or CTO or CEO, I should have just said executive team, they would say retaining staff and hiring really good people is really important. And I think this was in your report that there was some statistic that's a percentage of people that really want to embrace AI. Like they actually find they're not scared of it. They actually
Yeah.
think this could be really good for them in the future.
But yeah, it's an education process, isn't it? And it's such a good
Yeah.
point. I never really thought about that in terms of, freeing up time. That could create a lot of anxiety with people's roles. And if it's not explained what the journey is going to be, okay, once that AI is put in place, of course, every role is different, and some are more administrative. And what does happen? So I think it's such a bigger there's such a bigger picture at play with that. And then there's a skill shortages. So
Yes.
it's all coming at us in a way.
Yes, but I look at it as an opportunity. Like, how cool is it for us, this generation, to figure this really complex, knotty, problem, and get to a solution, right? Not a solution, but solution across the board.
How big is this? Can I put a number? Where are we with an industry around AI? And one being we're really only in its infancy, and we've got a long, long way to go. Clearly, 5 we're doing okay, and we're about halfway there. And 9, like, yeah, no, it's pretty saturated. We're doing pretty well. Where do you think we are in terms of just the evolution of AI and the potential of where we're going?
Oh, I think we are very much in the infancy. There is still, because remember that car engine is still being developed. Not all the kinks have figured out. Like there is really cool new stuff coming at us, whether it's, the research work that's going on with generative AI and large language models, that's going to change a lot of things as well. And we've just started it, right? So if I had to put a number, I would say we are between 2 and 3 in terms of the potential of AI impacting all industries, and the kind of use cases that you'll see coming at us. Just even with AI, it's still early, but think of the potential when AI and NFT and crypto and metaverse, all of those come together, right? When these emerging technologies blend together, those scenarios are going to be even more powerful. So we are very much in the infancy.
Deloitte has built a huge practice around AI. So like, and whenever I travel through the airport, I see ads and they're focused on AI now and the possibilities. So obviously the company as well is really well positioned to take companies by the hand and lead them towards a future AI.
Yeah, the challenge is because it's so early on, there is no one single playbook, right? We hear about there being no regulations, but there's really no best practices playbook, for every possible industry, every use case. And it's kind of a phase where you have to collaborate, you have to learn from the ecosystem to grow your own business. And the ecosystem includes your academic partners, your alliance partners, your research teams. So you have to be able to tap into the ecosystem to really thrive in this age of AI.
So give us something uplifting, Beena. Like give us a story that'll get us excited and make us want to go out and become data scientists and mess with algorithms and deploy AI into companies.
I am very excited about, what we'll see in the healthcare space. For too long, it's been a one size fits all. It's been more focused on, on providing medication on a one size fits all basis, but we realize there is an opportunity to do more personalized medicines, right? And also get more predictive. Like I see such uplifting news on AI being able to predict certain kinds of illnesses based on how you walk or how you speak. And, I think there is so much power in there. I also am very excited about, AI's potential in education. That's another area where if you think about it, our ancestors, the ancestors before that, all have had this one education model of one teacher to, I studied in a school where we had 50 students in one class. My son goes to school where there's 30 students in one class. So one is too many, right? I think what I've also learned that education and how you learn is, extreme. There are 6 different ways you learn. So imagine the power of AI to being able to provide that personalized education. And then you connect it with the power of 5G and network and things we are doing with IoT and edge. we can truly take education to the remotest parts of the world and really uplift an entire population, because I do believe that there is a cure for every ailment in some human brain that we just need to tap into via education. So I am personally very excited about the excitement about the power of AI in healthcare and in education.
Oh, it's awful. It's awesome,
it's
because
good
I'd like my kids to
on the positive
learn
side.
through an AI that isn't YouTube and TikTok. I think that would be really beneficial for us. But to your point, like 1 to 30, I think we made big inroads during COVID, because even my kids now have sort of specialist teachers. But I think for personalization, they want to learn differently. They want to learn different things.
Yeah,
And
it's
why do
so
we have
cool,
this
that
same
part.
course that we've always had throughout time?
And that's just going to really big, I think, personalization in terms of everything that we do. And that's where we have high expectations of the AI then, because
Yes.
you expect it. So, yeah.
Couple of rapid fire questions for you to wrap up. You gave an example earlier about an AI that profiled facial recognition and could help reduce kidnapping and other such things. Is it okay for the government to deploy an AI throughout society and profile everyone? It's a bit controversial.
It depends on the use case.
That's a pretty good political answer.
What did you expect?
Okay. Here's another one then. Will AI cure cancer within the next 5 years?
With human help, yes.
Dinner party guest. You got 3 dinner party guests that you're inviting over, dead or alive. Who's coming to your dinner party?
Ada Lovelace, Einstein,
Oh, yeah.
and Thomas Edison.
Who's the first one? Lovelace? Can you?
She is the first data scientist ever. She wrote the first algorithm. She's a British woman, and Ada Lovelace.
So you have 3 very smart people coming to your dinner party. I think
Very
I'd be a little
smart.
intimidated being at that dinner party. Hey, Beena, last question. What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
I would say everything is going to be all right. I studied AI and it was all in textbooks. I never imagined it would become real in my own lifetime. Even personalized marketing was considered, an extreme case scenario. We didn't have access to data or cloud, or, it just, there was no way anything could have been done. But, I'm an optimist, and I am just so happy to be alive and watch this technology evolve during my own lifetime. I'm so excited. So I would say, it's you are on the right path.
Oh, that's awesome. It's
That
so
is
wonderful
really
to
good.
follow you on LinkedIn and see your passion for AI, and all the reports that Deloitte are putting out are really, really good reading for anyone
Really
that,
good reading.
for anyone that wants to dive in, and your book, which I should also mention. So I really enjoyed the book. It's a practical guide to all the different types of AI that can be deployed, and the types of guardrails that we should put around it. And I would talk to you for hours, but you probably would prefer to talk to Einstein and Lovelace. Beena, it's been wonderful having you on our podcast. Thank you so much. Sorry about the AI in the software that couldn't quite get our audio to work, but
an audio issue that you've got to look into.
like all good things, we resorted to Zoom, and it just seemed to work when we did Zoom. So it's been wonderful having you on the show, and yeah, look forward to following you more on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
Thanks, Beena.
That was a really cool chat. I mean, aside from using up, we had 50 minutes to spend with Beena roughly. We used 20 minutes on getting the audio to work.
Yeah.
So we only had a 30-minute window
She
to.
was very gracious about it.
She was very good. Yeah. What's your key takeaways?
Key takeaway is that she was super positive, so very optimistic. Always looked at the education side, the healthcare side. I thought was a really good, takeaway from it.
It's like AI for good, right?
Yeah.
Like not just for corporate, not for profiling CVs and resumes and data profiling, but what is AI going to do for the betterment of society?
Betterment.
Is
that a word?
I don't know.
Anyway, we'll go with it.
Yep. Betterment.
Yep.
My key takeaway is 93% of organizations have deployed an AI, which that doesn't surprise me. I wonder what the 7% are doing. but it's a big number, and even for executives, and it was from their report. And some executives might not even know that it's been deployed, but it's interesting that they do know, which shows the maturity now of where we're at with AI. And yet, the results also showed that the majority of AI projects fail. So even though I was still quoting that stat,
the outcomes are low.
The outcomes are low.
Yeah.
So you got to lower expectations. So as Beena was saying, we're in a hype cycle.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like going to the gym and expecting to get a result within 4 weeks. If you just do Peloton for 4 weeks every single day, you're going to have a difference compared to doing it for 2 years. It's continuous development and continuous evolution.
Every day.
You love it when I bring it back to Peloton, don't you?
Yeah.
But it's actually true. Like, it's sort of like fitness. If you can do fitness continually and you deploy AI, you retrain, you relearn, you educate, you get positive affirmations.
But no one wants to be preached at. Let's just keep it.
No, I was going back to the AI at that point. I was thinking about how they would do that within an organization. So I think it's interesting. We're at the infancy. We're really early on.
Yeah, and she said that.
Yeah.
Like between a scale of 1 to 10.
2 to 3.
Yeah, we should have kept that a secret so everyone would watch it.
This is the end.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. So good to have you back. It's been really great. Clearly, you've not missed a step since you've been gone. But, this is why we do the podcast. It's fun.
Well, who's got the full-time job?
I hope you enjoyed the podcast. It's great having Claire back. And for those that don't know, what actually is being produced in the end is a series of edits that we had to go through just to finish it. So she behaves herself really well during the podcast, and then we get to the outro, and it's loose caboose. So,
Got places to be.
Gotta go. So, hey, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe if you made it this far on the various channels. Share with your friends too, because and if you've got guests that we should have on the show, we would love to hear from it, because my ability to recruit people is a little lazy.
Yeah, all different kinds of tech.
All different types of tech.
Yeah.
Have a great week. See you later.
Bye.